In this video, we're going to be covering how to combine Excel data. It's going to be very similar to the way that we used CSVs via pandas. But in this case, we're going to pretend like we have a data set, and I just made this up on number of sales for some given company. And every day there is 10 days worth of information. So I've worked with clients who have this kind of a setup where data isn't fixed in the past. So they're providing data to their data analysts in a rolling 10-day time frame, and then that gets archived into SQL or wherever the case may be from there. So in this case, this is what we're going to use as our data set. And we are going to combine this into a single data frame. And then at that point, we could either export it out cleaned up as a CSV or Excel or whatever the case may be. But ultimately, we just want to start with the data as it is. And then we're going to write the code. We're going to use our Spider browser or our Spider IDE, and then basically walk through the process here. So we have this open, and we're going to go ahead and get started. We need to start with our imports. A lot of these I already have installed, but we'll have import glob, and that's going to allow us to compare file names and paths to get everything within a certain range. And then we'll have OS path, which is going to allow us to get the modified date to do a sort operation. We're going to import pandas as PD. And then from the date time, we are going to import date time, time delta, and date. All right, so first thing we want to do is set up a path. So specify the path we are going to use, and we'll try to keep everything commented just so it's a little easier to follow. In this case, I'm going to start with letter R because I don't want it to catch any escape characters, and then we'll just go with C, users, PC, downloads, and then sales data. And just to show what the data looks like there, you're going to see that there's all these files, and I just created one for each day of the month and then one from the previous month. So we're going to filter this out because we only want the current month sales data, and then we're going to combine all of these files, and then we'll remove any duplication in our code in Python. So we have our path set up, and then we're going to set up a filter for this, and we're going to call it this month. And then we'll take date of today, and then we're going to plus the time delta, and then that'll be days minus 1. And the reason I have the plus days minus 1 is a lot of times when clients I work with are feeding data into some sort of data set, a lot of times they'll send like month to yesterday data early in the morning, and that day's not over, so you don't have that final day. So a lot of times on the first, you have to run the entirety of last month's data set. So in this case, this allows you to say, hey, run this for yesterday's month, not today's month, and it just allows us to work through that if we have that type of a data feed. If you don't, you could just say, hey, this month equals date today, and you're good. And then we are going to set this as a string, and then we're going to look for the month here. So this is going to return 10. And in our file names, we know that everything in this month is going to start with 10. If I had last year's data in here, I'd want to search for, it has to be 10 something with an asterisk, and then dash 21.xlsx if I wanted to force this year, or you could apply a check based off of this year the same way we're going to do it here. But since we're going to pretend that we only have this year's data and we only need to filter starting with the month number, you can do that if you needed to. And let's say the file names were something like 2021 1001, then you could put %y, %m, and that's going to give you the 2021 10 for this month. But in our case, that's not the way our files are set up. So we are just going to put %m for the month. And then if we want to, we could check what that looks like. So we could print this month, and then it would return that to us as just showing that 10 if you ever want to check it kind of as you're going. One thing I always like to do is put a start variable at the beginning of this and date time dot now. And then from the time that my code really starts running and it starts analyzing or pulling data together, removing duplicates, whatever, I'll put a start, and then at the very end I'll put a stop, and then I'll compare those two, and I'm able to at that point see how long it took. And then if I change anything in the code, I can see if I've made it better or worse. So just a personal preference of mine to have that. We're going to create a list of all the files that we want to work through. And in this case, we are going to put glob.glob, which is allowing us to look for a given area. And then we're going to look in like a Windows path. And then within that path, we're going to search for something. So we're going to have path, which was defined up here. And then we're going to look for within that path anything that looks like / and then plus this month plus, and then it could be anything xlsx related. So what this is going to do is say, look in the folder, since there's not a slash there, we need to start that off. And then we're going to look for anything that starts with the number 10 and then has anything and then is an Excel file. So that's going to allow us to filter just to our Excel files. And then we could, if we wanted to, print, I can't type today, the file list. And then that would give us the list of all the files. Now, since we are in Spider and we're doing the code here, when we run this in our variable Explorer, it's going to show that variable there. So we can just double click on it. But if we were in PyCharms or anything else and we wanted to be able to see that data and interact with it, you could just do a print command and it will bring that up. So now we will combine the Excel files. And in this case, we're going to create a variable called combined Excel. And we're going to use pandas concatenate function. And then we're also going to use pandas ability to read the Excel files. And for that, we're going to read in everything from a file called f, and then we're going to put a for loop right after this that is for f in file list. So basically, we have this list of files that is going to be all the files that meet the criteria starting with this month. And then this for loop is going to go through each one of those. And every time it goes through it, it's going to be F. So if we open that folder back up, it's going to filter this out. So I'm going to delete this in the case for right now. And I have it open, so I can't. But if we just ignore that, I'll do it the other way. It's going to select everything that's this month. And then it's going to start and say, okay, I have the first. Let me combine that, put that into the read Excel function, then concatenate, 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 and it's going to go through all of the files one by one until it runs out of the files in the file list. And we know that the file list only contains this month's files because we have specified that by setting up these variables. So once again, you have a list of all the files. This for loop goes through each one of those. We've just nicknamed that list that it's currently working on F, and then it's going to read that F into an Excel, and then it's going to concatenate all of those files. So to kind of work through it backwards, it just puts all the files together. Now, because we know that the data is duplicated, and we're able to see that here, we have 10 days worth of information. If I close that out, and then I open up the date right after that, a lot of the same dates are there. -1, the 19th was there, now it starts at the 20th. If we go to the 2nd, we're going to see that the 21st through the 2nd is there, I think. Yep. And all of the data is the same every time. It's just they're giving us 10 days worth of information. If you had differences in data, you could set it up to when you remove duplicates to keep last or keep first, and you can sort that data however you want. But in this case, we'll just work through it knowing that they're all duplicated. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we'll have our combined Excel file. And then we're going to set that back equal to itself, except we're going to put a filter in here. So combined Excel, and then we're going to take the column date, and we'll put that in quotes, date. And then we're going to make that greater than or equal to, and then we're going to specify a date, 2021 10/01. Since we know that the first of the month file had the data from the 21st through the 30th, we need to get rid of that data, especially if we want our report to only be month to date. So in that case, we've already filtered the files to just be this month, but now we have that little bit of layover information that was in the first of the month file all the way through the 9th that we're going to need to filter out as well. So that's what this function is. And I kind of set this scenario up where we would have to do different filters so that we could practice with all of them. So in that case, we have that filter complete. And then now we can put in the drop duplicates. So we will set this equal to itself, and we could create different variables. So this could be combined Excel, then this could be combined Excel filtered, and then this could be combined Excel no duplication. And I could have all those different variables so I could trace it as I kind of go through the process. But in this case, we're just going to keep overriding the same variable so we don't have that duplication. So this will be drop underscore duplicates. And then we are going to give it a data set here. Now, I am typing this in the case that like we had multiple, and if you wanted to include multiple, you would just put a comment, say, hey, get rid of all of the duplicates based of date, ID, and phone number. And I'm just making these up because they're not in our data set. But that would allow you to remove duplication off multiple columns. In this case, we only have one column that we're going to remove duplicates on, which is going to be date. So we're good there. And then we could say something like keep and then last. So you could pick, hey, I have this ordered list and I want to keep the first time it duplicates, or I want to keep the second time it duplicates, or the last time it duplicates. And you're able to specify that with the drop duplicate function. So at this point, if we were to print that combined Excel, we should see everything work. And this should be keep equals last. And there's an F missing there. So now we can see that we have all of the data broken out. We can see all the days of the month. And if we were to go in any one of our files for the 12th, we would see that it's always 5802. And then if we wanted to, we could put like a sort function in here or whatever the case may be. In my case, I don't really need this sorted because I'm going to put it into Power BI or wherever else that I'm using the data, or I'm going to perform some sort of visualization in Python. But this gets us to the point where we were able to take a bunch of different files, combine them together, remove those duplicates, get everything cleaned up, and then we would be able to write this data out to somewhere that we'd ultimately want to use. We did have a start. Now we can put a stop, and we're going to use that same code. So date time dot now, and then we can do something like print start, print stop, and then print stop minus start, and then that will give us all of our times here. So we can see that it started at this time, it ended at this time, and it took less than 1 second to perform those operations. That's all for today's lesson on Python. If you do have any questions, feel free to drop a comment in the comment section, and I'll follow up with you personally. Thank you.